Hello everyone, thank you for choosing this session. I'm Maya Stravinsky, a data scientist for Butterfly Data, and I'm going to be guiding you through trusted data for trusted AI and how we get data provenance right in the public sector. I'm going to be guiding you through an introduction on these two topics, going through some core concepts, looking at challenges that we currently face within the public sector, and a possible actionable framework that we can make sure that we're getting things right. So a little bit about us. At Butterfly Data, we're a UK-based employee-owned B Corp filled with data professionals that have worked across the board from Royal Navy, HMRC to the NHS. We help our clients navigate the full data lifecycle, making sure that we're advising in the correct way when it comes to all of these interesting topics. So why data matters for the public sector? If we think about AI within the public sector, it's not just about productivity, it ends up being a tool for governments. Now, let me explain that a little bit more. Below, you've got a snippet from the Artificial Intelligence Playbook, and there's two key tasks that AI performs in governance. So machine learning can analyze very large data sets, identify trends and anomalies in complex historical data, and support that data-driven decision-making that we're all looking for. So this is all those models that look at huge census data, anything like that, just pulling out those little key things. On the flip side of the coin, we can view and summarize huge amounts of information, as well as identifying correct errors in long algorithms. What we mean by that is those huge texts, whether it's a 60-page text for a service, you can kind of pull out those key information pieces straight away and then dive into the more relevant pieces that you're looking for. So let's split up the two terms, data provenance and trusted data. So data provenance is that origin, the original data entry point, or when it has been created, whereas trusted data is accuracy, security, integrity, privacy, everything enclosed in that. So it's what makes our data trusted. So data provenance does enable trusted data, and it shifts it from that opaque, unknown state to that transparent, auditable asset that we can use within our day-to-day business life. So, as I mentioned, there's a few kind of key core concepts when we're talking about data provenance and data governance. So I'm going to highlight the farm to table approach, but thinking about data. So first, we've got the source. So this is where our data came from, the farm, the original point. So we need to know this because we need to know if we can use this specific data for what we're trying to achieve. If it is allowed to use within the current frameworks that we're working with. Next, we've got the handling. So how was our data handled and transported? Has there been any changes that have happened along the pipeline that we need to be aware of that might affect our work? Next, we've got the lineage. That's that every hand that has touched our food. So we need to know those actions, we need to know those people, and we need to know that we can trust kind of the outcomes that they have produced. Next, we've got labeling. So this is our nutritious facts. So we need to know all the greasy details about our food, and that would be the metadata in this case. And then we've got our manufacturing date. So how fresh our data actually is. If our data has been produced from 2012 from a census, is that truly representative of the current state of our economy? Stuff like that. So we just want to make sure that it is accurate, it's kind of in with time. So our trusted data is traceable, documented, and fresh. So breaking those terms down a little bit more, we've got data quality. So this is our trusted ingredient. So that's the technical foundation and making sure that our produce meets the standards. So our DARM standards, we've got accuracy, completeness, timeliness, validity, consistency, and uniqueness. So we need to make sure that our data is hitting all those categories, not for every data point, but we need to make sure that they are hitting them where they are applicable. So the question we ask ourselves is this individual data point correct? If we flip it now, our trusted data is the data for those end users. So that's the complete meal. So think about it in your case as the business outcome. So this is the whole result of the quality, the governance, and the security. So we want to ask ourselves, is that final dish safe to eat? Is it ethical, and is it fit for consumption? So is it fit for the purpose that we want it to perform? So if you look on the left hand of the screen, right hand of the screen, you can see the data governance pie, I guess, and that's just a snippet from the Pharma DM book. And you can see all the different roles that play into account into data governance. So as you can see, data quality is highlighted. Then we've got all these other activities that we need to be performing to make sure that we're getting that data governance right. So thinking about ethical risks. So transparency black box. So this is the idea that we need to know those behaviours that are happening behind the closed door to understand why these decisions are being made. So is that kitchen door open? Can we just pop in and have a look? Our algorithmic bias refers to if the soil has been contaminated. Is there something from the origin or any of the models that the data goes through that could potentially result in biased outcomes? We've got information integrity. Has everything been labelled correctly? Is it standardised across the ecosystem? If it's not, we need to kind of find a way to do that. Environmental impact, thinking of a carbon meter in the kitchen. In our case, we want to make sure that we're not producing a lot of technical debt. There's not a lot of duplication within the processes or even within the data itself. We need to think about accountability gaps. So who's taking ownership of that final product and who's responsible at what stage for what in reality. We've got the AI Act, which basically is like if you pass with a health inspector, would you pass their checks? Would you hit all those points in order for it to be a good kitchen, in this case, a good use of AI? And then finally, kind of linking with accountability, we've got individual responsibility. So does that final head chef take all the responsibility? Does that product owner need to be responsible for all of it? Or how do we kind of break that accountability and make sure that everyone is accountable for their own part? So yeah, back to public sector challenges now, thinking about a bit more specific to yourselves. So what are some of our common pitfalls? In the world of AI, we've got a common phrase, garbage in, garbage out, basically highlighting the importance of the quality and completeness and everything of that data at the start to make sure that if it's not complete, it's not great, we're not going to get that good final output. So it's just making sure that whatever we put in, we got to understand it's going to be as good as what comes out is going to be as good as what we put in. So thinking about an example of when that wasn't successful is the Dutch childcare benefits scandal of 2012. There was a few issues with this one specifically. So the input, the data was biased. It was targeted towards those of lower incomes. There was more data for those individuals provided into the training. And on the flip side, there was a lot of algorithmic bias. So people were automatically being flagged as possibly fraudulent due to the fact that they had dual citizenship, or they were in a low income family, or even issues with people having twins arise and they were being flagged as fraudulent. And unfortunately, those investigations ended up being quite quick, and those families were forced to pay a large sums amount of money back to the government, which ended up in poverty for a lot of these families. And unfortunately, that carried on for a few years, for a long amount of time. Families didn't understand why they were being flagged, and they didn't know how to action this because of this black box system. And obviously that highlights quite a few issues that I'm sure we've seen internally happen as well. So it just highlights that importance of why we need to get it right from the very start. Going back to governance and auditability. Data governance are our kitchen rules, our responsibilities, our roles, who's doing what. So it's exercising of authority, controlled and shared decision making over management of data assets. So it's making sure that we have that structure there. Auditability is that health inspector trail. So the capacity to verify the accuracy, integrity, and provenance of data through comprehensive, traceable, and documented records. So basically, it means that we need to keep records of what we're doing to that data, keep records of where that data is going, and anything that might be happening to make sure that we're kind of covered. So if you look again onto the side, you can see another visualization from the DORMA DM book for data governance. So this kind of visualizes what provides our foundational activities. So we've got the privacy, security, and risk management, and all those at the bottom, which are the most important to get right before we then consider building up on that. So we've got stuff like data science, data visualization that are great things to be doing and are great assets to have, but we need to make sure that we get the baseline correct first before we do that after. So I promised some examples. So here are two main ones. So one of our clients ingests multiple data sources from third parties. Now you can imagine all of these come in different structures and formats. So we need to build a pipeline that standardizes and assesses that data upon ingestion. So, and we also check that data quality whilst that data is coming in to know what remediations would have to be made. We also make sure that we enrich that data. By enriching, I mean including open source data that will bulk up that data and just provide more for downstream than evaluations. One great business outcome that this has had is that those downstream services have easier access to clean data and have just a streamlined way to get the data, get it in, and start performing the analysis that they need to without first doing all the cleaning and streamlining of that. I promised you guys an example of where we've used AI, so here's quite a great one. During one of these SaaS hackathons, we wanted to tackle misinformation being spread online. So we use natural language processing and SaaS Via to fight this. So with news flooding, making it hard to manually verify what is true and what isn't, we built a system that assigns trustworthiness scores to our sources. So we used a large language model at the end of this to explain why these sources were being assigned that specific score. So it eliminates this black box concern that we have with AI and the decisions that are being made in the back end. So finally, we're going to guide you through some possible actionable frameworks and some examples of how you can possibly eliminate some of these risks. So at the very start, we've got our rules. So this is where we need to clearly lay out what we're going to be doing, whether we're using this data, what we're using it for, and start thinking about possible schemas and standards that we can build within our frameworks. Next, we've got that ingestion phase. So this is where we focus on the supply chain. So we're looking to detect changes possibly in the data. So we need to build things that flag these changes or standardize how these changes are being managed. Next, we've got validation. So this is our quality control. This is where we're assessing the data quality, stuff like that, and making sure that it's what we're expecting it to be. And this is also where we're building that metadata in the background to make sure that we're tracking all of this. Finally, we've got that constant monitoring. So this is almost your health inspector. So this is auditing, making these flags for if a important job fails, you have that notification and you can tackle that problem as soon as possible to then not face business effects. So we've also got some roles and I guess checkpoints that I'm going to guide you through. So we've got the farm, the owner. So this is the data owner. So this is that person that holds responsibility of the data that you have to communicate with to use the data and make sure you're using it correctly. Then we've got our logistics and storage team. So these are the data custodians, the data engineers, anyone that's kind of physically manipulating that data. Then we move on to our executive chef. So this is our chief data officer, the person that is responsible for overseeing these things happen from a business perspective. Then we've got a little bit lower down, so we've got our sous chef, that's the data steward, also on a lower level, making sure that those changes are correct when it comes to both data governance, quality, as well as the business standards. And then we've got our menu designer. This is the data architect. This is the person that's making sure everything works together, making sure that your menu is built to last you the full week, not running short on any stock kind of in the middle. As well as these typical roles, we also have a few checkpoints that we've got to tackle. So this is the supply chain checkpoint. So this is anything during the life cycle. We need to make sure that we have these processes in place to check to make sure that it's aligning with what the business needs as well as data standards. Then we have the kitchen checkpoint. So that's any operational and quality checks. So this could be your data quality checks. This could be a report that you put out at the end of the week to make sure that you're kind of fitting with standards and what you expected. Finally, we've got the restaurant checkpoint, the structural and strategic checks. Is it actually given the output you expected? Are you actually able to use the data for what you expected to, or is it not possible? As mentioned, there's a few little articles during this presentation, so all of them are here. The links will also be provided, as well as some extra little readings and links to government websites for their specific frameworks. And that is everything from me. Thank you so much for choosing this session, and do feel free to reach out to myself or anyone at Butterfly Data for some more information. Thank you.